So if you're not familiar, this course is being taught through the IPRC in Portland, which stands for the Independent Publishing Resource Center. And it is a really awesome community resource that I volunteer at. And it's focused on supporting small independent publishers, printmakers, artists, and writers. There are other workshops and events going on virtually right now, which are awesome. And I highly recommend you check them out. Yeah, and I'm a Risograph studio supervisor normally at the IPRC when we're open. And it's very sad not having access to my beautiful machines right now, but looking forward to getting back to them once everything's open again. So another thing that you might be interested in is who I am, and my name is Grace Mervin. I am a Risograph printer and a designer and a feelings facilitator living in Portland. And my practice revolves a lot around helping facilitate emotional experiences for folks. So sometimes that takes the place of physical exhibits where people can interact with them and explore their feelings around certain topics, like climate change is one that I work with a lot, or it also takes the form of workshops like this. And I'm exploring other mediums as well, so it's been really fun. This series is something that I created as a way to explore my feelings around this during this time. I think it's been kind of a weird time for people in general, but also creatives. You know, it's hard to navigate your creativity in a time when you're under a lot of stress and external uncertainty. You know, it's a weird time to be a human, but also to be a creative. And I've been struggling a lot with my creative practice and wanted to kind of create a platform to share what I've been working on with other people and share some of the practices that help me. One of those things is guided visualization, which is a practice that has really helped me over the last few years specifically. And I thought it was an important tool to share with folks just because it's something that you can always come back to internally. It doesn't rely on your external circumstances. So, you know, right now we don't have access to the same things we normally do, like meeting up with friends and maybe even like having the financial stability to see a therapist regularly or something. So this is something that you can always revisit in your mind and turn to your own internal guidance. So I'm happy to share it with everybody. So the last few classes of this series, the first one was centered around kind of all the projects that we have currently going on and thinking about our creative to-do lists and kind of exploring any creative blocks we have around those projects, sort of getting the general lay of the land and seeing, you know, what we have going on right now and what we're working with. And then the last class was kind of jumping way ahead into the future and thinking about the future that we want to collaboratively create together, which was a really fun one. We came up with some intentions for an ideal future, went into guided visualization, and then kind of like created a vision of what we wanted to move into afterwards, which was really fun. And eventually I'll get the PDFs for those up on my website, and they're really beautiful, so it'd be fun to check out. This class, I really wanted to focus on connecting those two pieces. So connecting where we're at now to where we want to go. Something I really struggle with, even as someone who visualizes my future regularly, is the like, how do I actually get there part? Because you can see a vision really clearly, but it doesn't necessarily mean the pathway there is clear. So that's something I really wanted to focus on this class, especially because it's something that I'm working on personally right now. So it's kind of a fun way for me to explore it myself. Last class, I introduced the metaphor of the constant gardener, which I'm just loving this whole like garden as life metaphor right now, which may be a little cliche, but I'm really digging it. So I'm going to keep going with it. The constant gardener is this concept that I was introduced to a few weeks ago, and I really loved it because instead of, I think it kind of speaks to the like constant practice of creating your life instead of, you know, forcing yourself to have a certain life, or having all these expectations, or like, my life needs to be perfect, it needs to be this specific way, and if it doesn't come out that way, then it's wrong, or I've failed or something. This metaphor of the constant gardener just means kind of like consistently showing up to prune or water, evaluate, or you're kind of constantly iterating on the garden, which is your life, and you're kind of constantly looking at what you have and like, okay, where can I take things away, where can I add things. So this class, we're going to dive a bit deeper into this metaphor and explore how this process of like intentionally tending our gardens can help us find a pathway into the future that we want to create. So also loving these projects that we're working on, building a personal website, working on letters. I love how much stuff in the mail is happening right now. That's so cute. Mom's learning how to draw birds and flowers. That's great. An oracle booklet for an oracle deck. Cool. Love it. Fiber arts, personal writing. Yeah. Perfecting my margarita recipe. Awesome, Jackie. I really am looking forward to testing that out once we can gather again. Awesome. So I am going to share my screen and we'll get into it. Let me pull up the right thing. Awesome. Cool. Let's just give it a few moments. Hopefully it doesn't crash my computer. Awesome. Cool. So can everyone see the screen? Cool. So this again is this awesome website, Miro. I'm totally obsessed with it. It's great. So I kind of took some time last night to create my now garden, is what I'm calling it. And this is how I am spending my time, my energy, and my money right now. This is like the current status of my garden. And I kind of gave little plots and an area to all these different things that I'm doing with my time and my life. So I'm spending time doing like self-development stuff, working on different courses and meditations. One thing I really loved about this was there's this like tiny little thing, and this is the time I spend grocery shopping, but then this is like the giant thing of how much time I spend recovering from grocery shopping, because that's like a whole thing now. I'm sure we all have experienced that, although it's gotten better recently. And I just was kind of laying out the different things that I'm spending my time doing at the current moment and being really realistic with myself. Like I spend a lot of time procrastinating. Like I'm not proud of it. I do. And I'm spending a lot of time on social media, or more than I normally spend. So I invite you to think about what your now garden looks like. And I kind of color coded these, which I was just getting a little extra, but I got excited about I'm like really excited about this metaphor. So I just got a little extra. But down at the bottom, I have some areas of your life to consider. So, I'm privileged enough right now to like I'm not working. I'm kind of on leave right now from my job. So that's one weird thing that like is not in my garden at all right now, which would normally be taking up way more space, because it's like this limited amount of space. And you have to this is how I fill this limited amount of space I have. But yeah, different areas to consider: work, creative practice, life maintenance, like bills and emails and all that kind of stuff that comes along with just being a human. Grocery shopping, which kind of felt like it needed its own category because it's kind of turned into this like whole thing now. Cooking, relationships, rest, community, habits. Like I gave myself a whole area just for stressing out, because that's something that I kind of spin out on sometimes. Social media, hobbies, self-development, professional development, exercise. groups you're part of, fun, like what are you doing, what you're doing for fun. I've been spending a lot of time outdoors. Luckily, I live really close to Mount Tabor, so I'm able to go on walks there. So I'm going to give us a few minutes to think about different areas in your life that you are different areas in your life that you are spending time doing, how you're spending your time, your energy, and your money. And it doesn't have to be this like garden layout situation that I have going on here. It can also be, yeah, and I'll be sending out a link to this Miro board later, so you can always come back to this too. This doesn't have to be your like final draft. This is something that actually took me a fair amount of time to do last night. So I'm kind of just introducing the concept, and you can come back to it at another point as well to like work more on it. But just to get like a rough draft to kind of just get a general lay of the land and see what you're spending your time doing. Being gentle, but also realistic. So I'll put a few minutes on a timer and let you kind of like list out what's going on. Wish I could play some music or something, but I haven't really like gotten that technologically advanced yet. And one thing to consider throughout this process is like, how does this list look like now versus before we went into quarantine? Because my garden looks very, very different right now than it did 2 months ago. So just something to keep in mind. This is mainly just reflecting your life right now. All right, got about a minute left. Again, you can always come back to this if you need to later. So just wrapping up. So something that I did with my garden was that I color coded things based on things that I wanted to grow in my life. Like, what do I want to spend more time doing after looking at this? You know, I want to spend more time resting because that's something that has really come up for me during this time. Even though I'm like at home, not socializing, not doing stuff, I'm still never really like taking days off, which was weird to realize. And once I started doing that, it helped a lot. So that's something that I want to continue to prioritize, is like compartmentalizing my life a little bit more. And then also thinking about what I want to weed. So just completely like get it out of my garden, don't want it, don't have space for it. And that's procrastinating and stressing out. Like I don't want that in my life. And then there's also the concept of pruning, which I really love. And it's kind of like, I don't want to completely get rid of this, but I need to kind of rearrange it into a way that works for me, so it can grow into something that better reflects what I want my life to look like. And for me, that's social media, grocery shopping, and some of the professional development stuff I've been doing, which kind of just gets to feel overwhelming sometimes. So I don't want to completely get rid of any of those things, but I want to kind of reevaluate how they're working in my life. And then also just things that like I'm happy with how much time I'm doing with this, and you know, that's kind of spending time outdoors, cooking and eating, spending time with my partner, that kind of stuff. So maybe kind of developing some sort of system with like stars or circling or crossing out for things that you want to grow in your garden, things that you want to get rid of, things that you want to prune, or things that you're happy with. So I'm going to give you about a minute to kind of think about some of those questions. Zoom in. And again, the categories are what you want to grow, what you want to weed, what you want to prune, and what's just okay as it is. Just give you about 10 more seconds here. And I'd love it if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat maybe one thing that you are excited to grow and one thing that you are ready to weed. So for me, I'm really excited to, if I can get it working. I'm really excited to grow these workshops and kind of like grow this area of my life, kind of thinking about how to turn this into something that takes up a larger percentage of my garden. And I'm ready to like weed this procrastination out. Don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but that's something that I'm really ready to kind of get rid of. So if anybody feels called to share, I'd love to kind of get some more things around this just to make it a little bit more collaborative. Anyone feels comfortable doing so. Ready to grow experimentation with new mediums. I love that. And ready to weed catastrophic thinking. Yes, same. Has no place in my garden. Um, Excited to visit project ideas, ready to weed major avoidance. Yeah, I feel that. So many wonderful project ideas, so little time. And then want to grow my writing practice and couldn't think of any weeds. That's pretty good, yeah. Maybe that's because you've been thinking about this more than I have. That's great. Learning the facets of an e-business, growing the e-business, and poor sleep habits. Yeah, that's a tough one that affects all these different parts of your life too, which is a bummer. Grow a yoga practice. That's one that will definitely serve you moving forward. Want to read too much focus on the future. Yeah, that's what I call future tripping, because you're kind of like not in the present moment. You're in this weird like future state that doesn't even really exist. Keep working the amount of time I spend working, creating, working on projects and working. A lot of working here, but that's good. Hopefully that means it's like working that you're enjoying. Weeding the amount of naps I have, time for a day off may help reduce the need of naps. Like I am a hard advocate for days off now, which I am very new to, which is kind of also a sad realization that I had where it was like, wow, I don't take time off at all. And it just helped me create a lot more balance in my life. So I do highly recommend that. So growing a lot of time I spend working on projects. Cool, awesome. Well, thanks for all the input. It's cool to see that there are some overlaps, and I'm sure that we all can kind of relate to some of these things, these weeding situations here. And now let's go over to what I call the dream garden. So this is now how you'd really like to be spending your time and energy and money. So I kind of like, this is me with weeding out the stuff that I don't really want, consolidating some stuff. And mine's actually more simplified than my original garden was. But what do you really want your life, like the structure of your life to look like? So for me, I kind of really want to have that rest and creativity for fun part much, much larger than I currently have it. Grocery shopping still has a place, but maybe that like recovery is sort of built into this rest and creativity for fun. And in my ideal future, grocery shopping isn't so stressful because I actually really like it, or I used to. Connecting, spending more time connecting with friends and family and community, hopefully in person, travel and local events. Like I really am missing seeing new places and being exposed to different things. And I'd really like to grow a lot of these creative things I'm working on to full-time fulfilling creative work and professional development. And expanding this kind of meditation and self-development piece of my puzzle. So I kind of invite you, even if it's not really like logistically structuring this out, this was a really helpful exercise for me to do on my own time. And even right now, let's just like think about things that maybe like, what are things that you want to add to your garden that isn't currently in it? And what else did I have down here? Yeah, what's important to you versus what do you feel like you should include? That's a big one, like what do you feel like you kind of have to include versus what do you actually like want to have in there? That's a big kind of differentiation that's pretty important. And one other question that I think is important to ask here is what's within you that wants to grow but needs tending, like little projects or little pieces of yourself, like I really want this full-time creative work is like super something that has been in me for a long time and that I really want to grow in my life, but needs a lot of encouragement and tending and all that kind of stuff. So again, maybe thinking of some of these categories, I guess I can drag them over. So what are some things that you want to add to this picture of your life, and what are some things that you want to get rid of? Even just kind of like journaling a little bit. I'll give you another minute or so. What would your like ideal setup look like? Just give you about maybe a minute. It's kind of an interesting exercise because it was really hard for me because I wanted to have some of these blocks take up more space, but I had to be realistic, you know, about, okay, well, I do need to, you know, allocate some time for life maintenance and doing stuff like grocery shopping and cooking and eating. And even though I wanted it to just be like rest and creativity, and then it was like, okay, well, I want to have work in there too, and I want to have space for this, and I want to have space for this. So kind of like, you know, only having a finite amount of space and amount of time and energy and all that kind of stuff, it was kind of challenging to be like, okay, well, now I have to shrink this down so I can fit this in. And it was definitely it's definitely an interesting exercise, kind of being like, okay, you know, this is what the ideal situation is, but at the same time, I also have to account for some of these kind of logistical things that come with just being a human. So again, just about 20 more seconds here. Oh, can you expand upon life maintenance? Yeah, totally. So I guess that's what I called, you know, like doing my emails, like, you know, paying my bills, budgeting, working on my budget, kind of like all the things that I need to do in order to make my life run efficiently. Things that like maybe I don't get creative fulfillment out of or enjoy, but it's just sort of like my own personal admin stuff, that I'm sure everybody kind of has in their own way. So I needed to allocate some time for that, because if I don't, then, you know, emails don't get responded to and everyone's like, what are you doing? So it's an important part to include. But I recognize it looks different for everybody. So cool. Well, let's wrap this one up. Again, you can always return to it later if this has kind of set you on an interesting little tangent. But one thing I am curious to hear is, what are you planting in your dream garden that's new? And has this process, has anything surprised you? Like, has anything come up that, like, oh, I spend way more time doing this, or this isn't, you know, my garden and I don't want it in my garden, or something like that. So for me, what's new in my dream garden is this full-time creative work that's like a really exciting piece for me that I'm, you know, really excited to kind of build and explore. But the surprise has been how much time I spend procrastinating, just being really real with myself about, like, girl, you spend so much time procrastinating. Like, if you, I don't know, that's just something that I didn't actually allocate any space in my dream garden for. Because in my dream garden, I actually just do stuff instead of avoiding it. But that was something that I think was surprised me and has been a source of some self-reflection, definitely. So if anybody feels called to share in the chat, maybe something that is new in their dream garden that they're excited to grow, and if anything surprised you so far throughout this process. Looks like everyone's still writing, which is great. New, working towards checking email only 3 times a day. Ooh, that's a good one. Surprising, investing in sustainable really well, so I take more time off while supporting wholesome causes. That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of look at your time and see where it's being spent. And email is such a time suck, so I totally feel that. Awesome. Well, oh, Jackie. Need to make more of an effort putting my work out there and applying to calls, competitions, residencies, etc. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, I think that's part of this class is like, how do we get to this dream garden, you know? Like, if I really want this big piece of full-time creative work, how do I actually make that happen? You know, that's kind of the hard part, is making the connection from now to then. So I am also in the same boat of putting myself out there more and figuring out how to actually make it happen. So I think I will, let's move on to the guided visualization. So we're now at this piece where you can see my map. There's the now garden, and there's the dream garden, and then there's this big arrow, which I guess in reality is not quite so linear, even if it's a bit arced. But the question that we now find ourselves at is, so how do we get there? How do we get to that dream garden? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to get into the guided visualization now. So I invite everyone to start kind of just getting a little comfortable in your seat, maybe getting some of your wiggles out, moving your head from side to side. doing whatever you need to do to get yourself comfy in your chair. I see some people stretching. That's great. I fractured my elbow, so I can't really do that. I'm just kind of, I can do this though, but not any more than that. But yeah, let's just, you don't have to be sitting up. You can even lay down for this, just whatever feels comfortable and good for you. There's no right way to do this. But just slowly beginning to bring your attention inward, kind of settling into your seat, beginning to relax your body, taking some deep breaths. And when you start to feel comfortable, just closing your eyes, continuing to take some deep breaths and really letting yourself kind of move into a dreamy internal space with some playful curiosity about what you're going to experience. Continuing to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just relaxing into your body, into the present moment, letting the outside world just drop away and giving yourself the gift of just really existing in the present moment. And we do this by beginning to notice, with our eyes still closed, some of the sensations that we can sense around us. So feeling our clothes on our skin, feeling the temperature of the air, maybe any smells in the room. Maybe you cooked breakfast this morning. Noticing any sounds you can hear, starting with the sounds that are closest to you. And slowly moving your attention out to the sounds that are the furthest away sound that you can hear. Now, continuing to breathe deeply, just imagining a orb of shimmering, colorful light resting at the top of your head. You can give it whatever color you need. And imagine this orb touching down to the top of your head and slowly beginning to fill your body with shimmering, healing light, all the way from the crown of your head, down your eyes, past your nose. You're relaxing your jaw, your tongue, down your throat. This light just giving you whatever you need at the moment to relax and feel safe. Down your shoulders, down your biceps, past your elbows, down your forearms, all the way through your hands to the tips of your fingers, down your chest, this beautiful shimmering light, relaxing you through your stomach, down your hips, your thighs, your knees, down your calves, to your heels, and all the way through your feet to the tips of your toes. Really just sitting with this shimmering, healing light filling your body, feeling yourself relaxing in the present moment. Letting go of any tension and letting it drain out the bottoms of your feet into the earth. Letting go of any energy that doesn't belong to you, anything you've been carrying, and breathing in a sense of calm and playfulness. Now, with your eyes still closed, we're going to begin to imagine the room that you're currently in, or wherever you currently are. Imagine yourself sitting in the seat you're in the room you're currently in. Making out all the details in your mind without opening your eyes. And we're going to imagine that the seat you're currently in begins to float up off the ground and into the sky, beginning to move slowly over the city that you're currently in. You know you're safe and comfortable, and you breathe into the experience with some calm curiosity, knowing that there's nothing to fear. Just taking in the sights and enjoying the process. And you begin to move away from the city that you're currently in. And on the count of 10, we're going to land in a place in nature, a wild place with no humans. It can be a forest, a desert, a jungle, a tundra, an island, a grassland, whatever you want, any wild place. We're in transit in the sky to this place. And you might not even know what it is until you get there. You can let your subconscious take the reins. So we'll begin our descent now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a moment to really notice where you've landed. Is it a place that you've been before? Or is it a place you've only seen in photos or on video? Wherever it is, just really allow yourself to see it and feel the experience of being in this place. Noticing any smells or sounds, maybe the temperature of the air, or what kinds of plants might be around you. It's really feeling what it's like to be in this beautiful, wild place in nature. And as you're looking around, you notice that nearby there's a path that is leading away from the space you're currently in. Something about this path calls to you, and you slowly enter the path and begin to walk down it away from the place that you've landed. As you walk down this path, take a moment to really notice as many details as you can. What does the ground look like? What can you see around you? You don't know where the path is leading you, but you trust that whatever is at the end of it is for you. The path begins to twist and turn and begins winding its way up a hill. As you make your way up the hill, you see that at the top of the hill, there's a clearing. In this clearing, there's one animal, and it is waiting for you. It's okay if this animal isn't crystal clear. It's okay if it flickers in and out. Don't try to force what animal you think you should see. You can really just let your subconscious bring something into the clearing for you. And again, this does take practice sometimes. So if it's not happening, it's okay. Just really remaining open to whatever comes for you. Neither you or the animal is afraid, because the animal is here waiting for you to give you advice for a question that you have. As you begin to approach the animal, I want you to notice as many details as you can about this animal. It might not even be a real animal. It might be something very different that your mind has created. Now, think back to the dream garden that you created, this vision for how your life is structured in the future. And I want you to ask the animal, how do I get there? What do I need to let go of to make space for the things that I want to grow? Or whatever version of this question feels right for you. At the core of it being, how do I get there? And the animal might answer your question not in a verbal way, but maybe more with a feeling of a sense of knowing. Could be kind of like an energetic transfer, but receive the message and feel it along with the energy of this animal reverberating and absorbing inside of you. Even if it doesn't fully make sense, you're just absorbing whatever was transmitted, and that alone will help you understand it later. After you've received the message, you can thank the animal and watch it move slowly away and exit the clearing. You can take one last look around you, and when you turn around, you see the seat that brought you here. You can sit back down into it, really just taking in as many details as you can of this beautiful wild place, feeling the calming nature absorbing in through your body. And your seat begins to lift off again, moving slowly through the air, beginning to make your way back to the city that you came from. Again, remembering that you are safe, carrying this message from this beautiful animal back into your life. Slowly just moving your way through the air, safe on your seat. And on the count of 10, we'll begin our descent back to the place that you left from. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now that you're landed back in your room, you can slowly start to begin to bring your senses back to the present moment, noticing the temperature of the room, the sounds around you, kind of acclimating yourself back to the present here. And as you feel ready, slowly starting to wiggle your fingers and toes and maybe roll out your neck again. Just arriving back in the present, and when you feel ready, opening your eyes. Welcome back. And kind of, I still have some stuff to cover, but it is 11:58. I do want to give you a few minutes just to kind of like journal what your experience was. Maybe something about the animal and what message they gave you. So I'm going to give you a few minutes, and I do have some more stuff I wanted to cover. So yeah, I'll just give you some time, and then if you need to leave, you can. Otherwise, you can hang out, and I just have a few more minutes of context stuff at the end, so which I can send out in an email too. Awesome. Cool. So I'll just give you about a minute to kind of like get out what your experience was. Ooh. Yeah, Jackie, I relate to that. Cool. So just finishing up here. Again, this is something that it's a meditation that you can come back to in the future. And it's also something you can continue to journal about moving forward. So you can always return to this practice. And if this is your first time doing a guided visualization, there's so much out there online, like YouTube, and Insight Timer is another one that I really like. And I'm working on kind of recording a series of these to share with folks. So there's a lot of stuff out there if this was helpful for you. Your subconscious is a very trippy place and a fun place to explore in this way. Cool. So I just have a few more things that I kind of want to go over. I'm going to share my screen again. Feel free again if you need to leave to do so. I wasn't expecting to go over time. I just got excited, I think. Okay, so this question is, how do we get there? And if you feel like sharing, I would love it if you drop in the chat, maybe like if you can summarize what the animal told you or the feeling that you got from the animal of the answer to this how do we get there question. I'd love it if you could share it because I'm so curious to know what came up for you because it's different for every person. But some general rules of thumb that I kind of came up with in line with this garden metaphor, of course, because I'm totally obsessed with it. I think something that is really hard for me is patience and this whole concept that like the seeds that we plant and the intentions that we have aren't going to just grow overnight into the things that we want them to come to become, you know. We don't expect to plant a seed one day and then have full grown vegetables the next day. So something that I have a lot of a hard time with is just being patient and saying like, okay, if I'm putting the effort and the time in now, it's going to eventually turn into something if I'm taking care of it the right way, you know, if I'm continuing to water and, you know, do like maintain it and do the things that I need to do in order to grow this thing that I want to see in my life. The other rule of thumb is understanding our seasons. And I think this one's really interesting because I think especially as creatives, we want to be creative all the time. And like we kind of expect, at least I do, that I have access to this same level of like productivity and creativity all the time. But realistically, like we can't always be in bloom. We can't always be in this like creative, productive flow space because we need to have times of rest and planning and absorption in order to have those addictively beautiful states of creative flow. So like being gentle with yourself and being like, okay, I don't have to be crazy productive all the time. I can just like allow myself time to take in inspiration and go on weird, you know, trips to like see stuff and absorb stuff. And it's okay that maybe I'm not being productive all the time or I'm not like working on these bigger projects because sometimes it's also just not the right time for projects. Like it might be something that you want to do really badly, but it just might not be the right time. And sometimes we can kind of let those things go or put them on a back burner instead of trying to force our way through them, because it's just not the season or the time for that project. Something that is also like really hard for me is saying no to stuff. And that's this kind of mindfully pruning and weeding. So giving yourself time and space to assess your life and how you're spending your time, especially as we begin to enter this kind of like reopening state where our life might be going back to ways that, at least for me, was very unsustainable. I was just so busy all the time, and I have to be really careful about what things I let back into my life in that sense, because I don't want to enter that same space again. And really, we only do have a limited amount of resources, so like time and energy and all that kind of stuff. So really using that dream garden as kind of a framework of, okay, what do I want to let into my life and what do I want to spend my time doing? Kind of seeing if you're acting out of scarcity or people pleasing. Like, it's okay to say no, especially if it gets in the way of creating this vision that you really truly want. And also exploring the concept of pruning. So kind of exploring parts of your life that you're not completely happy with, to see how you can adjust them or trim them in order to make them work for you. Another big one is self-compassion. Like, realistically, I'm still going to have some procrastination, stressing out in my life in the future, or something else will come up that will eat up my time that I'm not totally happy with. And that's okay. I have to really be compassionate towards myself and understanding that I'm imperfect, I'm a human, these things happen, and just continuing to be kind and gentle to myself, even when I find myself repeating unhelpful patterns or feeling stuck. If that's something that you have a hard time with too, there's a woman called Kristen Neff who does these really beautiful guided meditations and has written some really wonderful books on self-compassion that I recommend. Another one is curiosity. So really just allowing yourself space to be curious and follow your curiosity wherever it leads you. This is part of kind of being the constant gardener and not being like the perfectionist master gardener. As you tend to your life and kind of create what you want your life to be, you're kind of constantly readjusting and seeing what's working and what's not. It becomes kind of a collaborative project instead of being, this is what my life needs to look like and this is how I must create it to be this way, and if I don't achieve this specific thing, then it's wrong or it's bad or something. Like, we don't want that mindset. Like, we want to be open and curious and kind of enjoying the process, as opposed to being so rigid and strict with ourselves. And yeah, it's Kristen Neff. She's awesome. Highly recommend. So yeah, just allowing yourself space and time to explore things that are interesting and exciting, and see how, like, that might grow into this whole new part of your dream garden that you didn't even expect, So yeah, this curiosity kind of turns into seeds that you're planting to grow larger things in your life. So it's kind of nice to make space for that. And last but not least, you need to care for the soil and the seeds. I'm sorry, I'm like doing this metaphor so hard, but I just honestly, like, the deeper I dig, the better it gets, honestly. But to me, this really means like self-care. And I know that's sort of like a cliche thing sometimes, but I really do think that caring for yourself creates a good environment for the things you want to grow in your life to do so. So for me, it's like eating food that is good for my body, making sure to spend time exercising, sleeping enough, spending time outdoors. And when I'm not doing these things, I can really feel the impact it takes on my mental and physical health. And it doesn't create an environment where I can hold space for these things to grow in my life that I really want to. So I think we did touch on some of that in the kind of things that came up when people were talking about what they want to weed, is that, like, if we're not creating the environment for holding space for this part of ourselves, then it's harder to create the life that we want to live. So that's what I had. Sorry again, I ran a little bit late. I'll send out an email afterwards to everyone with some of my notes on this last part, because I know I kind of breezed through them. And I'll send out the link to this Miro board so you can kind of come back to it and look at some of these questions, or thinking about your garden and kind of coming back to some of the things that we talked about. So that's the board. And then down here, I just have a thank you. So thanks for coming. It's been so much fun facilitating these. And again, there's a suggested donation of 5 to 15, but no one's turned away for lack of funds. So don't worry if you're in a tight spot. But if you can, my Venmo is endoplasmic with a Z on this little sticky note, and I'll drop it in the chat too. And yeah, it's been such a pleasure. And I'd love to hear about what experiences you had in your guided visualization, if you feel open to sharing. If anybody wants to drop it in the chat, or even go off mute and talk about it if you have time, I'm around. So, but otherwise, thanks for being here. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. So my email's on the Eventbrite email I sent out too. So if you want to reach out or have any questions or want resources or whatever, I'm around too. So yeah. Oh, great. I'm so glad to hear it. The monkey told me everything you need is already inside you. Yes, I love this. Let that motivate you. That's so beautiful. Yeah, every time I do this meditation, something different comes to me, which is really fascinating. Like I tend to get deer a lot, which I was sort of like, deer, come on, but I've grown to really love the deer. And then one time I had a walrus, which was really cool too. I don't know, it's always something different.